Trusted my wife for 4 years. But what her best friend did next. At 38, I believed I had mastered the art of reading people. My engineering career was thriving, my marriage to Isabella felt rock solid, and our suburban Denver life seemed picture perfect. But sometimes the most devastating betrayals come from those closest to us, wearing the mask of friendship. What I discovered about human deception would shatter everything I thought I knew about trust. Isabella's college best friend Serafina was what you'd politely call a force of nature. From our first meeting at a backyard barbecue, I sensed something predatory beneath her charm. She commanded every conversation, inserted herself into every plan, and scrutinized me with the calculating gaze of someone cataloging weaknesses. But Isabella worshipped her, calling Serafina her ride or die, the sister she never had. So I swallowed my instincts and played nice, thinking I could outlast whatever game she was playing. The wedding planning revealed Serafina's true colors like acid on metal. After I proposed to Isabella following 4 years of dating, the engagement bliss lasted exactly 2 weeks before Serafina began her campaign of control. First, she declared our sage green and cream color palette absolutely tragic and demanded we switch to her preferred burgundy and gold. When I suggested we stick with our original choice, she actually gasped and said I was clearly trying to erase Isabella's personality from her own wedding. Then came the vegan menu demand. According to Serafina, half our guests were probably plant-based and would be devastated by our planned dinner selection. This was complete fiction. We had maybe 3 vegetarians total, but Isabella started second-guessing everything. The final insult came when Serafina announced she deserved her own processional moment before the bridesmaids, claiming her decade of emotional support for Isabella warranted special recognition. I watched my fiancé crumble under this psychological manipulation, nodding along to increasingly absurd demands. When I tried to intervene, explaining this was our wedding, not Serafina's performance art, Isabella accused me of being controlling. The word stung because it was so deliberately chosen, so calculated to make me back down. And it worked. Serafina got her grand entrance, strutting down the aisle like she was the bride, while my parents exchanged horrified glances from the front row. Marriage didn't diminish Serafina's influence, it amplified it. Every weekend plan, every restaurant choice, every decision required her consultation. Isabella couldn't pick a movie without texting Serafina first. When I gently suggested we needed boundaries, Isabella's defensive walls shot up instantly. She's been through everything with me, she'd say, as if their history justified this bizarre 3-way marriage we'd somehow created. The breaking point came 18 months later when Serafina's 2-year relationship imploded. She arrived at our doorstep on a Friday night, mascara streaked and clutching a duffel bag, wailing about her boyfriend Tyler's sudden departure. What I thought would be a single night of comfort stretched into a month-long occupation of our guest room and our entire lives. Serafina transformed our peaceful home into chaos incarnate. She sprawled across our living room furniture in pajamas until noon, watching reality television at volumes that made conversation impossible. Our kitchen became her personal disaster zone, dirty dishes multiplying like bacteria, half-eaten meals abandoned on every surface. She commandeered my tools for bizarre art therapy projects, spreading paint and sawdust across our patio without asking permission. When I finally demanded she leave, citing the obvious truth that a month was more than generous, Serafina turned the situation into high drama. She accused me of heartlessness, of not understanding trauma, of being the controlling husband she'd always suspected I was. Isabella, predictably, folded under the emotional manipulation, begging me to be patient just a little longer. It took every ounce of authority I could muster to hold firm, and Serafina finally departed in a storm of accusations and threats. But Serafina's most devastating weapon was still to come, and it arrived on an ordinary Saturday afternoon while Isabella was at their weekly brunch. I'd spent the morning running errands, groceries, hardware store, nothing remotely suspicious. When Isabella returned, something had fundamentally shifted. She avoided eye contact, responded in monosyllables, and radiated a cold anger that chilled the air between us. That night, she finally struck. "Were you with someone else yesterday?" The question hit me like physical violence, so unexpected and cruel that I actually laughed before I saw her serious expression. According to Isabella, Serafina had witnessed me in a parking lot, locked in passionate embrace with another woman, wearing my distinctive brown leather jacket near the main street shopping center. The accusation was simultaneously specific and absurd. Yes, I'd been at that shopping center, buying milk and bread. Yes, I'd worn that jacket. It was October and cold. But the idea that I'd chosen a public parking lot for an affair was so ludicrous I couldn't process it seriously. Yet Isabella's face told me she'd already chosen to believe it. Do you really think I'd cheat on you in broad daylight in a grocery store parking lot? I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. Does that sound like something I'd do after 4 years together? But Isabella had already retreated behind walls of suspicion and manufactured doubt. She needed time to think, she said. Space to process. The woman I'd married was disappearing before my eyes, replaced by someone who trusted her manipulative friend over her own husband. The next week dissolved into a nightmare of silence and accusation. Isabella moved into the guest room, treating me like a contaminated stranger in my own home. Every attempt at conversation was rebuffed with claims that she wasn't ready to talk. Meanwhile, I wandered through my days in a fog of disbelief and growing rage. How had 4 years of loyalty and love been discarded so easily based on one person's obvious lie? Isabella left without ceremony, packing her belongings while I was at work and leaving only a text message about needing time apart. The lawyer's papers arrived the next morning, cold and final as a death certificate. Our entire marriage had been demolished by a single fabricated story, and I was powerless to fight an enemy I couldn't even confront. The social destruction was swift and merciless. Serafina had crafted her narrative carefully, spreading whispers through our mutual friend groups about my supposed infidelity. Former friends began avoiding me, their discomfort palpable when forced into conversation. Family members started asking pointed questions about working on myself and what really happened. I became a pariah in my own social circle, guilty until proven innocent in a court that had already rendered its verdict. For 3 months, I lived in this limbo of manufactured shame and isolation. The rage burned constant and cold, directed not just at Serafina's calculated cruelty, but at Isabella's willingness to believe it. If trust could be destroyed so easily, perhaps our marriage had been more fragile than I'd ever realized. Perhaps I was better off discovering this now rather than years later when the stakes were even higher. Then Sophie contacted me. I barely remembered her from a party years earlier, but her message cut through months of confusion with surgical precision. I know Serafina lied about you. Can we talk? The proof she showed me transcended my darkest suspicions about human cruelty. Text messages between her and Serafina revealed not just the lie, but the glee with which it had been crafted. Claire has finally left him. She really believed me, lol, Serafina had written, followed by detailed mockery of Isabella's gullibility and celebration of the marriage's destruction. She'd called Isabella too stupid to realize I was controlling, bragged about helping her escape, and expressed relief at not having to hear about our lovely marriage anymore. The casual cruelty was breathtaking. She'd annihilated years of love and commitment for her own entertainment. Reading those messages, I felt something shift deep in my core. This wasn't just vindication, it was transformation. The months of self-doubt and questioning evaporated, replaced by crystalline clarity about exactly who had wronged whom. I wasn't the victim of misunderstanding or miscommunication. I was the target of deliberate, calculated destruction by someone who found joy in others' suffering. I forwarded the screenshots to my lawyer with instructions to use them strategically, then crafted a careful message to Isabella requesting a meeting. Her response was cautious but agreed, and we met at a park near her parents' house where she'd been staying. She looked diminished somehow, wearing uncertainty like an uncomfortable coat. I handed her my phone without preamble. "Read this," I said simply, watching her expression transform as the truth unveiled itself word by devastating word. The color drained from her face as she absorbed Serafina's gleeful confession, her hands trembling as she reached the messages mocking her naivety and celebrating our marriage's destruction. She lied, Isabella whispered, the words barely audible. She completely lied about everything. The admission hung in the air between us, heavy with implications neither of us was ready to fully process. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her, another victim of Serafina's manipulation. Then I remembered the months of isolation, the destroyed friendships, the constant questioning of my own worth. The problem isn't that she lied, I said, my voice steady despite the emotions churning beneath. The problem is that you believed her without question. You threw away 4 years of marriage based on one conversation with someone who's always resented our relationship. That tells me everything I need to know about where I ranked in your priorities. Isabella's tears came then, accompanied by desperate apologies and promises to make things right. She'd cut Serafina off completely, she swore. We could go to counseling, rebuild trust, start fresh. But trust, once shattered so completely, leaves fragments that cut long after the initial break. I couldn't unsee her willingness to discard me, couldn't forget how easily she'd chosen suspicion over faith. I wish things could have been different, I told her as I stood to leave. But some damage can't be repaired. You showed me exactly how much our marriage meant to you, and I'm choosing to believe that demonstration over any words you might offer now. I walked away without looking back, feeling something like freedom for the first time in months. The social rehabilitation was swift and sweet. I shared Sophie's screenshots with key members of our former friend group, letting the evidence speak without commentary. Apologies flooded in, accompanied by expressions of outrage at Serafina's manipulation and embarrassment at their own gullibility. Some relationships proved salvageable, others didn't, but I'd learned to value quality over quantity in human connections. Serafina's downfall was spectacular in its completeness. Word of her deception spread through our social circle like wildfire, destroying relationships she'd spent years cultivating. Her workplace learned of her manipulative tendencies, leading to professional isolation and eventual termination. Social media posts revealed a woman spiraling into defensive rage, blaming everyone but herself for the consequences of her actions. Isabella fared little better. Living with her parents at 34, she attempted reconciliation with friends who'd witnessed her casual betrayal of a loyal husband. Some forgave, most didn't. The woman who'd once commanded respect for her professional competence and personal integrity became known as someone whose judgment couldn't be trusted in matters that counted. Months later, Sophie updated me on the final act of their toxic friendship. Isabella had attempted reconciliation with Serafina, offering apologies and olive branches to the woman who destroyed her marriage. Serafina's response was predictably cruel, laughter, mockery, and dismissal of Isabella as pathetic for even trying. The manipulator had no use for her former victim once the entertainment value was exhausted. Looking back now, I recognize the gift hidden in this devastation. Serafina's cruelty revealed truths about my marriage that might have remained buried for years, creating deeper problems down the road. Isabella's willingness to believe the worst about me, to discard our partnership without investigation or discussion, showed me exactly what our relationship was built on. It wasn't the foundation I'd thought it was. The best revenge, I've discovered, isn't elaborate schemes or calculated cruelty. It's building a life so fulfilling that your former tormentors become irrelevant footnotes in your story. Serafina and Isabella destroyed each other through their toxic dynamic, while I emerged with clarity about what real loyalty and trust look like. Sometimes the universe delivers justice more perfectly than any human plan ever could. Today, I'm surrounded by people who've proven their character through actions, not just words. I've learned to trust my instincts about manipulative personalities and value partners who demonstrate faith in difficult moments. The marriage that ended was built on shifting sand, but the life I'm building now rests on bedrock. That transformation, purchased with months of pain, was worth every difficult moment of the journey.